How's everybody doing? Everybody excited to talk about cybersecurity early on a Wednesday? Yeah? Yeah? All right. Good deal. Well, we have a really great panel for you guys today to hopefully share some experience and talk a little bit about what they do in the security industry and maybe some actual real life instances of having to deal with breaches and what they've gone through either through their careers or even as part of their organization. So we're going to do a quick introduction. First up is Matt Wilson from Gould Evans Architects. I knew I was going to say something wrong. He's the Vice President of Information Technology over there. Then to his left, you've got Scott Unruh, who is the Vice President, Director of Security for JE Dunn Construction. And last but not least, we have Carol Espinosa, who is the Principal over at Freedom Interiors. So they're going to share a lot of stuff with us today, but before we get right into the cybersecurity discussion, I want to do a quick poll. So raise your hand if in the last, say, 2-3 months you've read something, seen something on the news, talked to a peer, or heard anything about a cybersecurity breach or incident or anything along those lines. Okay, good, everybody. Okay, second question. Raise your hand if you're worried that something like that's going to happen in your organization. Okay, good. You all are in the right place. This is the right panel. There's not another one next door or anything like that, so we're glad you made it to the right place. We're going to go ahead and jump right in, and we're actually going to start with Carol. So, Carol, you had something happen not too long ago. Would you care to share and kind of give your experience and tell your tale and some of the things that you learned along the way?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you guys hear me okay? I have the distinction of being the reluctant expert. So these guys here, they all know what they're talking about. All I know is what happened to us because we were the victim of cybercrime. And what I learned was that calling people and resources after it happened, I learned that it happens to a lot of people, but everybody's embarrassed to talk about it. I'm also a little embarrassed to talk about it, but if it's going to help one person, I will be the poster child for cybercrime. So you're welcome. I'm going to start by telling a little bit about what happened. If you guys have any questions or comments, please jump in. We're hoping to make this a conversation. But one more poll. Has anybody ever have anything happen to you, to your organization, sitting here? Yep, a few people. So we're happy to have you guys here, but we're happier to have the people who have not had it happen to them, because the only way for you to learn what you don't know is to actually educate yourselves and talk to people. And what happened to us was one day I got a call from the CEO of a vendor that we work with, a manufacturing partner that's also a small family-owned business. And he called to let me know that they were not getting their payments. And I was very confused because I'm very involved with our finances, and I knew I was approving those payments and we were sending them out. And he went straight to, oh, you're the victim. There's somebody within your organization that's taking those funds. And I knew in my heart that to not be true. In looking into it, we found out that our accounting manager's computer had been hacked. And looking further into it, a few days later, we discovered that she got an email that looked like it came from Microsoft, and it said, click here to update your password. And she clicked on it, and it said, give us your password. And she entered her password, and that gave a group of people somewhere in the world access to her computer. So they sat inside her computer, seeing everything that she was doing for weeks, for a very long time. And they actually targeted some very large invoices that were coming due. And right before they were due, she got emails that legitimately looked like they came from our manufacturing partners. The email extension was correct. The signature was there, asking her to change the banking information, the ACH information on our system, saying, oh, we have a new bank account, please see attached. We got attachments that were on letterhead, had signatures, everything looked really kosher. And we didn't know what we didn't know, so she went ahead and changed those account numbers. And we sent hundreds of thousands of dollars to bank accounts that did not belong to our manufacturing partners. A really cool thing that I learned after that is that the liability of those payments were on us. And did you guys know that once you send an ACH, it's on you? And nobody had ever talked to us about that. And as a business owner, so my background is in project management. I'm very keen on details. I want to make sure that we're doing everything right. We had and still have a CFO for hire. We have a banking partner, insurance partner. We have processes. And I just didn't know what I didn't know. And it was the worst way to learn about what we didn't know. And so we right away went into a really wild chase. And I went into project management mode and a lot of downtime trying to figure out what happened and writing dozens of pages of reports for the FBI and for the police to try to get that money back. And I think one of our biggest lessons is that you can have all of the security measures in place. They're only as good as the people using those security measures. And the bottom line is everybody is in security. Your guys on the field using tablets and phones are in the security business. Your office manager's security business. And it's really key to educate everybody to pay attention, to take it seriously, to not click on any links unless you know for a fact that they are legitimate, and to actually understand the human side and the checks and balances, because you can have filters and talk to security people, but we didn't have checks and balances on the accounting side. We didn't understand that, you know, it's really smart to do double checks and independent checks on bank accounts and call different people to make sure that we're sending payments to the right account. So all of those were really tough and expensive lessons to learn, and I'm hoping that you guys don't have to go through that.
That's a scary story and probably something that a lot of folks can relate to. And you said something that I think is interesting and most people probably don't think about in cybersecurity, and that's they were in your system for a few weeks before they ever really took action. And so that leads into maybe a question for Scott and Matt. What are some things that you can do if you do suspect that somebody's in your system or that there's something amiss? Like, how can you prevent some of those things, or what kind of steps can you take once you really acknowledge that, hey, we think we have a real problem?
That scenario is one that we run into quite a bit. We've thousands of trade partners, and I don't know how many ACH. I don't want to know, but the changing of domain names to look just like your vendor's domain or our domain even. JE Dunn with only one N or with 3 or something like that. And we constantly see these domains show up, and then maybe a couple days later, then we'll start seeing the emails of someone wanting to change a bank account, and it's right in line with a project or something like that, and it's, I mean, we see that over and over with different partners and everything, and it's amazingly difficult for for our accounting and groups like that to root out some of those, especially when it comes from like the compromised user, employee themselves, where it's like from the legit email address and everything. That makes it very difficult. So then those accounting practices is where, that's our next layer of defense, and working with third parties and validating those account numbers. Sometimes that fails. And so then you have a third defense of having to go and just contact and call, that company, and of contact information that you're maintaining independently from anything on email, anything that you're getting associated with this ACH payment is, knowing the contact of that company and being completely outside of any other communication, because we've seen every one of those compromised in instances where, and again, we've made payouts and things like that, and yeah, we're definitely on the hook for those.
Just to add some more, have certain processes in place, as Scott was saying with accounting. Have a verbal confirmation for any type of ACH transfers. If somebody's emailing about doing a direct deposit, that one has been a major one for our organization over the past year. Is we'll get an email from somebody's Gmail account. It's a fake Gmail, but it's a legit employee's name on it, saying that they need to update their direct deposit. How do they do that? Always do a verbal confirmation after that. Have certain processes in place for your accounting department for paying invoices. If somebody's changing an ACA or a bank routing information, pick up the phone and call your contact at that place to get that information to make sure it's valid. One of the big things that we pride ourselves on, or try to pride ourselves on, is make every single one of our end users a security person. Teach them about all the vulnerabilities that are out there and what to watch for, and just use the education as the key thing. It'll keep them safe personally, and it'll keep your business safe as well. If you don't have an IT consultant, depending on your IT or your company size, there's plenty of good IT consultants in the Kansas City area that are willing to come in and do an assessment of your network or how you work and improvements that you can make from a technology side. So I'm happy to talk about a few of them outside of this. And I'm also a good resource to make some introductions if anybody's interested. But having a good IT consultant can definitely save you as well, just to make sure you're doing proper practices.
Thanks. So there, you talked a little bit about how you're on the hook for the ACH, and I think all three of you mentioned that to a degree. And so those payments and all of those types of things. And knowing that, and some of the other things that you might be able to do if you feel you are in the middle of some sort of a cybersecurity incident, thinking about insurance. So what was the impact, or what can you guys speak to when it comes to cybersecurity insurance and the changes in the industry, especially maybe over the last year or two, as we've seen more ransomware, more highly visible incidents and things along those lines. Carol, what was your experience, going through the incident and working through insurance and things along those lines?
Yeah, that was not fun. I picked up the phone and I called our insurance company within hours of it happening. And I learned then and there that our coverage covered $5,000 in cybersecurity. So we got a check for $5,000 on an incident that was hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, I'm not complaining. At that point, it's like anything will help. Please do send that check. But it barely made a difference. And I would meet with our insurance broker every year and go through our policy for the renewal process, and that never came up. And I didn't know what to ask. So we're now insured to millions of dollars because it's totally worth it. So as a small business owner, we're 14 people. We're a really small company. Sometimes you don't want to make the investment because you think it's never going to happen to you, and you look at that cost, and you just don't want to make that additional cost up front. And I'm here to tell you that it is absolutely worth it, and you all should be calling your insurance companies and asking if you don't know if you're covered or not. Ask the question and ask the limits, and consider making that investment before something happens.
I would agree with that. We were having a little discussion before this that integrating cyber insurance into how you're going to respond to an incident is key, because there's, to what you all dealt with, there's only a certain amount of time that you have to get money back because once it hits that first account and then goes to the second and third, law enforcement has a much more difficult time, especially when it gets to that third and fourth account. And so rapid response and having a plan is very key to responding to a breach or to a payment that was made or whatever. And having your cyber insurance provider partnering with you on that response is also very important. We've had, we meet pretty regularly to talk through, like, what are the things, like if our plan is, like we have this plan developed, what are those things that we should be including in that? And like simple things as like contact information of, if I have my plan and everything is locked up, who's the person I need to contact? Because I can't get into Outlook right now and look. So I need to actually legitimately have a name and a number in my checklist that's the person I'm going to contact. And, so whether that be my breach coach or my broker, whoever that is, I need a name and a number. And that has to be like step 2 or step 3 after we've figured out that something has made today a bad day.
Yeah, so one of the things you mentioned was about a breach coach. I didn't know what a breach coach was until about a year ago. I've been in IT for 17 years. So it's kind of a new terminology that I had to adapt to, and I think Scott and Eric have as well. But basically, they're your first coach or first call that you make, and they're going to help walk you through every step of the process of what to expect and everything like that. And with the breach coach, they're going to have the confidentiality agreement that you sign with them to keep everything confidential of whatever data has been missing or any compromise that happened. So doing that, and then the checklist from your cyber insurance, that is another big thing that's going to tell you where you stand at from a cyber approach as well.
So, excuse me, a question about the breach coach. Is that something that is a carrier provided or is a vendor that you can retain?
I would talk with your insurance provider. They normally have some partnerships with some breach coaches to get you in contact. That's who we went through. We went through our insurance provider, and they gave us a list of approved ones that work with them. So that was a good place to start.
Yeah, good question. Very good question. As Scott was saying, we were speaking right before the panel about how recent that term came up for us. And Matt said he's been in IT for 17 years. I've been in IT and security for 15 years. And I hadn't heard of it until about 8 to 10 months ago as well. So these we're always learning new things, I think, in the industry. And speaking of new things in the industry, I'm going to leave this one with Scott and Matt. I'm really curious to get your take on what some of the biggest risks are for our industry, not just cybersecurity in general, but some of the biggest risks for, construction, architecture, engineering, those types of industries.
Yeah, building systems, building management systems. Any building that you pick, you've got 40 different platforms that are operating that building. Every one of them communicates. Every one of them has a vendor that has to access them. And all of them are, this is where I get like on my rant, they're like horribly insecure. And so their arguments can be made and everything, but it's, you hear it, if you look at like headlines in industry, and you also hear of what the government, what the White House is putting out, there's a lot about industrial controls. And when industrial controls is kind of translated into like our construction terms as building management systems, it's the Siemens, the Honeywells, like all the different platforms, the elevator platforms and everything. And so we have people that, we have folks that have to access and service those. And if you put those out on the internet so that it's easy to access and for warranty and everything, then that's a searchable website, essentially, that's hosted on a not so capable platform. and that is the absolute way in. And there's tons of search engines just like Google that search for those things specifically, and make it super easy to just search what you want, find a vulnerable HVAC system, and that's your way in, and then you just move from there. And it's difficult because now with IoT and commercial IoT, effectively it's just rebranded building systems, but there's the concept of trying to make a more manageable building, and something that around facility management and making it more efficient. Those are just additional systems, additional data, and everything that we want to harvest and we want to have access to. But it's again, trying to secure that is becoming more and more of a problem. So that's probably at least one right off the top of my head.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of people out on job sites, but I know friends and things in like manufacturing, and technology is slowly working out into job sites with equipment and things like that. So securing a job site whenever you have thousands of people coming in and out is very critical. Making sure that only people with privileged access have certain access to the job site. If you've got staff like JE Dunn, you guys probably have staff, having like a secure room that can be closed at the end of the day if somebody's not going to be there 24/7, but there's workers there 24/7. Just making sure that certain processes are set up. Don't share out internal Wi-Fi networks. Don't make them the same. Try to make it easy for your employees, but difficult for anybody else that doesn't understand your policies and procedures inside your organization.
Great point, and I think it's interesting to bring up job site security. Performance contracting, we work on hundreds of job sites in a given day, and we run into a lot of the same risks that I think maybe a JE Dunn runs into. So Scott, I'm curious, what are some of the things that make you cringe when you think about the job sites?
One, like collaboration, and we push a lot of data to the job sites, and trying to keep that secure at those locations, and trying to educate people that aren't our employees, and trying to reach out to those folks. It's a challenge just to educate our own employees, and we've been talking through integration of that within like our safety program, and so we're exploring things like that, which those are already practices that are in place and are absolutely a priority as for everyone. And so if we can integrate that in and help inform those that are coming onto the job site, that there's a lot of information that still needs to be secured, and protections that had to be made. The equipment that you kind of mentioned is another one that is scary, in that those are more and more connected, and that's a concern around the connectedness of the equipment and the vulnerabilities associated with that, especially with like remote control equipment. We're meeting with our vendors to talk through what their plan is for protecting some of that as well on the sites, because that can immediately become a safety issue.
Very good. I think it's interesting. Most people probably don't tie in safety to security, but really it's actually the number one concern of security is human safety. So it's the first consideration in everything you do when it comes to security. So I think it's interesting tying that into the job site and how somebody could potentially attack a piece of your equipment or something along those lines, and actually either take it offline, which is expensive, or create safety concerns, things along those lines. So earlier, Scott, you mentioned layer 2 and layer 3 as far as addressing different ways to add in security and how to deal with vulnerabilities and things along those lines. And And I was hoping maybe you could talk a little bit more about layered security, because I think that's important, and that's a topic that I think everybody would be interested in. But then maybe go a little deeper there and talk about some different layers and things you can do to, as any size of an organization, to prevent some of these things from happening.
Yeah. So the concept of layering security is about just making it more and more difficult for a criminal to take advantage of you. And so, you know, with Carol's example and everything, the first one is employee training and making them aware that that these are things that you should be watching for, and that you shouldn't just be giving out your credentials to a website or whatever. And so just educating your employee or your workforce is the first stop, because they're the ones that are interacting with the workstation. They're interacting with other people. And then you move into, you know, technical controls of like what we do with on IT. And so we're trying to put, you know, controls in place at the workstation or on the servers, and, you know, firewalls and things like that to you know, protect just if something does get through, that it only limits to just that area. But if a criminal is intent on, they think that you've got something important that they really want, then it's, you know, just adding additional layers of security to protect those crown jewels and those assets. For us, it's drawings, and drawings for maybe particular clients and things like that that are considered sensitive. So we're going to wrap things around those drawings and say that those can't just go to anyone, or that they're encrypted or something like that, so that if they do get pulled out of our systems, that they're not usable. And other, you know, for other organizations, it can be proprietary practices and everything, and being able to protect that. Those are all just examples, I think, of different layers. But, you know, with Carol's example, the awareness and the ACH protections, you know, those are all just different layers within those different environments. And, you know, it's just increasing the difficulty. That's all you can do, really, is just increase the difficulty, make it more expensive to the point where they don't want to continue the pursuit of taking your information. And it's not necessarily expensive on your part. It doesn't have to be, but it's making it expensive for that criminal, you know, and thinking through how can I make them spend more time, because they're getting paid just the same. It's a complete corporate organization. They're paid workers just like anyone else. So their time is money, and if they don't get it in a certain amount of time, they move on.
You got anything to add there?
Yeah. Yeah, education is a big part. Your employees are the first line of defense. So I have a term that we use at Gould Evans. We started sharing it a couple years ago. Is think shit whenever you get an email, and it's got a link in it. And shit basically stands for stop, hover, investigate, and think. Because if you accidentally click on it and you give your information, the first word that comes to your mind is shit. What did I just do? So just make sure that whatever your policies are, as Scott was mentioning, make it layered. Make sure everybody knows that stuff. We have things in place on how we communicate certain things inside of our organization. Making sure that if certain things are going to be changing procedure-wise, it always comes from the same person. It's never somebody different. It's the same formatting every time. It's always mentioned verbally. It's always mentioned in email. It's always over-communicated as much as possible, so people expect that change is coming. I just education. Eric asked me first what am I passionate about. It's educating the users, just making sure that everybody understands the risks that are out there and what is the flavor of the day for cybersecurity.
So let's keep it right there on education, and the human element, I think, of cybersecurity. So keep it with you. And how can you do that? How do you train all of the people in your organization, and how do you keep cybersecurity and all of these different things, top of mind for those human, security experts?
Yeah, there's a couple different vendors out there. The one that we use is KnowBefore. It's a paid-for service, but they have every week we send out security tips and tricks for our employees. It could be personal related, how to keep your identity safe on social media, to keeping your bank account information safe whenever doing online banking. There's plenty of those articles out there. Insurance providers, if they've got a cybersecurity department, they've sent out information on that stuff as well. And then just kind of anytime that we have office calls, we generally get on there and just kind of talk through and use that as a 5-minute education with all of our employees. And then we also have an open door policy that if anybody has any questions related to security, or if they've got a suspicious email, they can send it on over to us and we'll investigate it.
Carol, I'm curious what changed for you from an education perspective after you went through what you went through, and how you've had to adjust.
And I'm going to play devil's advocate just a little bit because I have a different perspective. Matt is right, education, but as a user who gets emails all day with tips and tricks, it's really easy to say, oh, yeah, security. Delete, I know everything. So how do you make sure that people understand that it's important? Because we can talk about very large breaches, but it's actually happening at all scales. And I don't know if we're targeted, but I think everybody's targeted. You guys can attest to that. But we actually created a game of where is fake Carol? Because every time somebody new starts, they get an email that looks like it's coming from me. If you pay attention to the domain, it's clearly not me. But new employees, I think they're looking at our website, and every time somebody new comes up, they know how we create our email addresses. So somebody got an email from Fake Carol saying, can you please get a few $25 gift certificates to Amazon and send me the codes? That person walked over to my desk and said, do you want me to expense those gift certificates, or do you want me to use your card? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, oh, the email you sent me. I'm about to buy those gift certificates. We're laughing, and it's funny, but it's also not funny because you send out those codes, it's money out the door. And that's somebody who actually heard the story about the fraud. We talked about phishing, we talked about email hacking. And so people are just so quick to do what they do, and he wanted to please me by getting those gift certificates. So how do you make sure that, one, people understand how important it is, but two, you actually engage them in being that first line of defense? And we actually created that where's Fake Carol, and we have a big cardboard cutout of Fake Carol, and we share in the things that Fake Carol asks people to do. It's really out there. So, and I don't have a good answer, right? It's easy for us because we're small and we're all sitting there in the same room. But when you're talking about thousands of people, you guys have a much bigger job than I do to engage everybody.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That one thing that not the same. We don't have a Where's Gordon, but we do involve him in. Gordon was a part of this like gift card thing, you know, or whatever. And we will have him talk about, you know, incidents where his name has been used to request things, and making it relevant to the employees, and informing them that, like, these things are happening, and you know, it's coming from Gordon, or it's coming from Beth, our CFO, and having them talk about it and bringing it up. Everyone's going to listen to Gordon, and everyone's going to listen to Beth. That's a fact, and so it makes it relevant. The other thing is, you know, we use same products and you know, educate our employees and everything, but I completely understand the I'm going to delete it. I don't have time to you know, read that email or whatever, because I even personally, like, if I make it 3 lines in and it's still going, I'm going to move on from that email. And so having discussions with different departments, really like these discussions now, of having QA and letting employees talk through and ask questions of, like, why can't I install this software on my machine? Why are you blocking that from happening? Because I need it now, and it's a hassle. And you know, just talking through that with them and giving them the context of why that's bad, and why we're kind of putting those things in place. It's helpful for them to understand, and it also helps build that culture of, you know, when I win them over on you know, good practices, then you know, they're going to take that back with their team, and you know, it's not going to be something that they complain about. It's like, well, yeah, we get it, and it's more understandable.
So I think Carol and Scott, you guys made great points around how there's top-down engagement and belief in security, and driving that through the organization. It's not just, oh man, the security guy's in my inbox again, this is awful, and sending it straight to the trash can. I don't know about you guys, but I also have rules that do that just automatically send things into the trash can.
And for the record, it's extremely valuable and not awful, so thank you guys for doing that.
I think that those are great points, and having engagement, and you know, security is often the enemy of convenience. It's not typically making things easier for someone to do, and it can feel a little bit challenging. But if you see the leaders of your organization, if you see it start to develop as a culture, all of a sudden it's like, oh, I totally get it. I understand, you know, why these things are important.
Because getting hacked is extremely inconvenient.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, dealing with an incident is probably just as, or even more challenging and disruptive to an organization than some of the stuff that goes out. So we have one more thing to cover, and it's a little bit more, you know, forward-looking. And so we're just going to start with Matt and go down the row. And I'm going to ask you, so this is such an agile topic as far as how much it changes, the different ways that people are trying to trick you every day, get into your systems and things along those lines. How do organizations and security experts and CEOs and CFOs and CIOs and your people in the field and all of those folks stay abreast of that? Or how do you, even just from a security perspective, stay ahead of what's happening in the cybersecurity industry?
It's hard. It's really hard. As I mentioned earlier with the breach coach, I mean, we didn't know about it till a year ago. So it's always hard with the things that are ever changing. As I mentioned earlier, have a good IT consultant that you can ask questions about. Kind of watch some tech news. They're normally pretty good. Try to find some mailing lists from reputable security firms. CrowdStrike is a good one. Cyber Reason's another one. They send out information of kind of the latest threats going on. There's been an uptick with Ukraine and Russia threats and cyber attacks and things like that. So, I mean, I think right now cyber is the forefront of everything. But it's really hard to just always stay in the know. Always treat everything that you see as kind of skeptical, I would say, until you've investigated enough. The RFP and RFQ responses, I'm sure everybody's gotten those phishing emails. Click here for this RFP. Make sure that you investigate who it's coming from. Have you ever worked with them in the past? If they say that they're a referral, find out how they got referred to you. Just really think about everything that you kind of come across before you click on anything or enter any information in there.
Yeah, I would agree that there's a lot of groups, like even here in Kansas City, there's a lot of local groups that that you can participate in, and there's a lot of amazing talent here locally, and there's a lot of good contributors in those groups. So you have folks like SecKC, and you have Women in Security and InfraGard that are all great active organizations that have active participation. They do presentations. They're also good resources for finding talent. Talent is a struggle with cybersecurity. So if you want an amazing high demand job, go into cybersecurity because we can't find anyone. And so those local groups are very helpful, and they touch on a lot of topics that are more emerging. The other thing is that government is well aware of where the front line is with cybersecurity, and you see it with all of the White House releases, a lot of different initiatives that are going on and organizations that are spinning up. So folks like CISA and NIST, and trying to keep from acronyms and everything, so sorry about that, but I'm pretty passionate of all of the resources that are out there that are free. CISA, so CISA.gov, they recently started offering free consulting services. So they'll do pen tests for you. They will do phishing tests for you. They will help assess your risk, and all for free. And it's a platform it's a program that they're pushing for. They also have a very high-level Shields Up campaign that has come up a lot more with the Ukraine situation and the attacks on critical infrastructure, which a lot of us would potentially relate to on the critical infrastructure side of things. So kind of, when you know where you sit within that whole supply chain, then there's a lot of resources there to help with that. But I mean, Twitter feeds and everything else, there's endless amounts of resources to keep you updated. It's just, then you try to not get overwhelmed because it is a very significant uphill battle. Yeah, and the talent is probably one of the biggest battles.
From a small business perspective, again, IT security can be a full-time job, right? And if we're a small company, we don't always have the time and the resources, but it's really important that we take it very seriously. And as a business owner, you need to have a good attorney partner, a good banking partner, a good insurance partner. I just learned what a breach, what is it called again? Breach coach. A breach coach. Had you guys ever heard of a breach coach? Anybody? Okay, so one person out of everybody here. So I just learned something new today as well. So it's really smart to have that one person or one organization in educating yourself on the front end to know, when do I need to engage you? What are the 3 top things that our entire team needs to be looking for? Because I unfortunately don't have time to go to Twitter feeds and learn about cybersecurity. I wish I did, and it is extremely important, but I think that when we get overwhelmed, we try to push things aside and not think about it and say, oh yeah, no, I don't have 5 hours to look at that, so I'm not going to look at that at all. So finding that one person, one organization that is a resource to you, that you know when to engage and you know that they'll be able to help you and guide you in the right direction is extremely important.
Yeah, so thank you for the perspective, everyone. I think we have some time for Q&A. Okay, cool. So we're going to do a little Q&A, and if you want to direct your question to the panelist or panelists that you would like to respond, that would be super helpful. If anybody can't hear the question, just let me know and I can repeat it. So I think we have one back here in the back.
Yeah, you guys did a really good job of talking about the wire transfer fraud. Maybe touch a little bit on ransomware and what to look out for that, because that hits everybody. I know our industry is getting hit hard with wire fraud, but maybe just let folks know what they should look out for and how to help prevent it.
Yeah, I can touch on that one a little bit. We've had some good thank goodness we have not run into that yet. But we've had peers that we've talked with and understanding like what did they, how did it happen? What time even did it happen? And so a lot of things happen off hours because they expect that you're going to have a team that's 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. So it's going to happen off hours and it's going to happen on the weekend or on a holiday. And a lot of times that's when the lockdown happens. But prior to that, they've gotten in via email. And someone clicked on a link that let them get in to gain a foothold into the network. And they sit and they just bake. They look at your network. They figure out and know it better than you do. And they get all the information and all of the credentials, so when the time comes, they will lock the doors, lock you out all your systems, and encrypt everything. And they are now taking that information and storing it so that even if you do unlock, they'll just sell it on the black market still to get your payment. So phishing is one of those first ones, and then being able to have backups is critical for just the ransomware that affects encrypting your files. Then backups is going to be your solution to the fastest restoration. But beyond that, then you're getting into engaging law enforcement for the folks that have taken your data and are holding it ransom. Ransomware or law enforcement is going to be where they're going to be able to provide the help because you can't really get that data back. But I mean, those are the big ones. And the ransomware stuff is also when they get into those systems, they're looking at vulnerabilities of your platform. So just making sure all your software is updated is another key piece. Easier said than done. By all means, because we have thousands of pieces of software.
And just for the record, law enforcement is busy because it's happening so often, so they're not always able to get to you right away.
And what's your frequency, Scott, on backup? Every half hour, every hour?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always going to lean towards the side of like real time and everything and backup as quickly as possible. But, you have to keep you're not going to protect a $10,000 asset with a $100,000 solution or protection because it just doesn't make sense. So it's establishing those expectations, or what we call them SLAs or service levels, of what, how long can we, or how much of a gap in time can we be okay with putting that information back in, and that's going to set your time of how often you're going to do those backups. and then how long you're going to retain those, and then that gets into your risk of how long do you think it's going to take for you to detect when that attacker is in your system. You're going to have backups for longer than that period.
And a little bit more on the backups too. Don't store all your backups in one location. If you have them in one location, try to find a cloud repository or a cloud backup solution that you can copy that data out to. Because if you have them stored in your current building and your building catches on fire and your live data and your backups are in there, you have no data. So from a ransomware standpoint, as Ryan was mentioning, you also have to think about building access, flooding, fires, things like that. So talking along backups, don't store all your data in one location.
Scott, you mentioned something that I think is important, and that is for all security investments and things along those lines. Every organization has to take into account what level of risk they're willing to deal with, and how much money an asset or information or process is worth, and that should give you kind of a gauge on, hey, how much do we need to invest in this? If this goes down, are we going to lose $200,000? Well, then you probably want to invest somewhere under $200,000 to protect it at the appropriate level.
You talk about multi-factor authentication and when it's best to use it, and not really from a business, but from a personal perspective.
Everywhere. If multi-factor or dual-factor authentication is an option, turn it on. It could be as simple as just a website that you go visit to log in to check on your 401k, or if you have a HSA account, any type of banking information, 100%. Any email systems that you use should have multi-factor authentication. Anything that has the ability to do it, enable it.
No, very, very passionately on that. Credentials are out on the internet all the time, and whether it's LinkedIn or whoever, all those credentials are out there. Everyone uses the same password for everything, so you can consider your password useless. So multi-factor is the baseline for everything that you do, both personal and professional.
And one other thing that I'll add too with the multi-factor is if you have trouble with managing passwords, don't keep them on a spreadsheet. Don't keep them on a Word document. Don't keep them on a Post-it note, anything like that. There's plenty of password managers out there. LastPass, 1Password are probably the two biggest ones. Both are fantastic. Both of them have multi-factor authentication enabled. Both of them have web browser plugins. So as you go to the website, it'll auto-populate your information. And then if it requires multi-factor authentication, it will still prompt for that as well.
I think we have time for one or two more quick ones.
We've made a habit of turning all our computers off on weekends and during holidays when we know someone's not going to be around for a while. Is that a fool's errand, or is it actually going to work?
Not bad. I mean, yeah, that reduces what we call like the attack surface. I mean, that reduces all those points where people can move around and everything. The servers are going to be the hard one of a lot of that stuff stays up. So I mean, if you're in the practice of shutting them down, and it's not bad because updates usually happen when you power up, so allowing a lot of updates to happen and you're resetting that workstation, that just allows it to be more convenient for your employee base anyhow.
I agree. Doesn't hurt.
Any other questions?
How fast did you implement two-factor authentication, Carol, when that translation happened?
Same day.
That's pretty fast.
We're small and nimble.
That's pretty fast.
Yeah, and if you use Microsoft has Authenticator So if you're paying for Office 365, Authenticator is part of that package.
Okay.
Can I piggyback on that? The Authenticator actually has a built-in password manager.
Yep.
If you use it.
It does. Yep.
So that's really good.
Microsoft Authenticator has a built-in password manager, so if you have that in your organization already, probably use that. Great. Okay, well, with that, I want to say thanks to the panelists again. Truly appreciate the conversation. I learned things today, so that's always helpful. Hopefully all of you took something away from the conversation as well. Want to thank all of you for being here. The first step in dealing with this stuff is really just getting awareness around it. So just being here is step number one towards all of you being security experts. So, and I think that's a wrap. So thank you all.